So, welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. Da-da-da-da-da. Streams. Data trecută despre ce am vorbit cu voi? Guys.
Parcă de virtual, de la virtuale,
Așa,
nu?
și v-ați uitat pe chestia asta cu IO stream-ul. La ierarhia de clase, ok? În primul rând, hai să vorbim despre UML și despre la ce folosește în supărare. Carina. În opinia ta, la ce supărare folosesc desenele astea? Cum dau zoom? De aici.
Ca să vezi asta, cum să zic, exact codul și cum sunt...
Codul? Vezi codul în diagramă?
Nu, cum sunt interconectate toate clasele și toate funcțiile și...
Așa, deci la nivel de clase? Da, săgețile ce reprezintă?
Și funcții și...
Așa. Da, ce reprezintă săgețile?
Asta, poți să vezi și inheritance-ul și...
Dar ce îs? Ca și... Ok, let's switch to English, ok? Because I forgot you were English speaking.
Ok.
Fellows. Hi everybody, let's go. So, hello kids. Cum era din SpongeBob SquarePants.
Are you ready, kids?
That's it. Okay, so Anna, can you read what this picture depicts here?
What picture?
You cannot see? Man, I'm streaming.
Sorry. Yep.
So, can you explain what you're seeing here in your own words?
The connections between...
Yeah, what is iOS?
Is the supreme class.
The supreme class, nice. Do-do-do-do-dum. You know that Love Supreme, like song from, what's his name? What's that guy's name? I just wanna feel real love, feel the home that I live in. I
Robbie
forgot
Williams.
his name. Robbie Williams, yeah, that's the one. Okay, so, what kind of a class is this? So these are the manipulators. Okay, I got it. So how can you describe in a sentence the relationship between OStream and iOS and iStream and iOS? Yo. Anna.
Yes.
How can you describe? Tell me a sentence with a noun, a verb, and an action. I don't know. A subject, an action, and an object.
Well, with
which is
this stream we can read, those stream we can write with.
No, man.
iOS.
I mean, you need to just, in a clear sentence, tell me what is the relationship between iOS and OStream. Based on, you just need to read the image, okay? You have an arrow that goes from OStream into iOS, so follow the spiders.
OStream is a subclass of iOS. So
you can simply say that OStream is a iOS, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and eStream is a iOS. What do you think iOS means? It's an acronym for what?
Input, output streams.
Yeah, right? And then you can say that an output stream inherits from iOS and also an eStream inherits from iOS. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So, what about these classes right here? Somebody else. Bia.
Yes.
They inherit from eStream.
Okay. So what do they mean? What What can you say about what is the difference between iStream and ifstream and eString stream?
So if a stream works with files,
Okay.
and the other one works with strings specifically.
Okay. So is there a difference between the type of class iStream and ifstream and eString stream?
Yes, ifstream and isString stream know specific things for files and for strings, I guess.
So what does that mean? They're
I don't know.
concrete classes, right? How about eStream?
How about?
Hmm?
What about isstream? I don't know.
Is it abstract? Is it concrete?
I think it's. Okay. I think it's concrete. Maybe no. I don't know. Yeah. No, it's abstract, I think. I don't know.
One way to find out, right?
Right?
Well, it says that cin is an object of this type. What does this tell us? If
that
you can instantiate an object, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's concrete.
Okay.
Right.
Bodo.
Yes.
How about the relationship between IOStream and iStream and OStream? Do you find that type of relationship in any object-oriented language?
I think it's a double inheritance, but I'm not very
So
sure.
do all the object-oriented languages support double inheritance, multiple inheritance?
I'm not sure, but I guess no, because generally it is not a good idea.
Because you create this rhomboid here, right?
Yeah, in this case, they are kind of independent, so it's fine, but in many cases, it's not fine.
So again, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, maybe in some cases you can take advantage of stuff like this, but you need to use it with care, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated thing.
I know. I mean, each time you turn a tree into a directed acyclic graph, you kind of create trouble, right?
In the case of inheritance, this is certain.
Correct. So just keep this in mind that in C++ you can do this, right? You can inherit some from multiple upper classes, right? So what they say is that they want this type of class to combine the behaviors of both input and output streams, right? Type of class to combine the behaviors of... Mamă, ce voce am, bă, pe echo, Doamne, păzește. How do you stand me? So, okay. Do you have questions about this stuff? Did you understand the overloading of these operators? Did you use it in your implementations?
Yes, I think it was 2 assignments ago.
Okay. Because I just want us to get up to speed. Okay, so we do a bit of recap. Look behind. If you have questions, okay. Anybody else, if you have questions regarding these two courses that we're threading right now. Phil Pascuti.
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, I'm here.
That wasn't the question, bro.
Yeah, I know.
You come up with these Hamlet philosophical questions. To be or not to be. I know you're here, man. I mean, I didn't ask that. What's up with you?
What's up with me? In terms of OOP, I don't have particular questions from this lecture.
Okay, so we wrap it up. Go home. Okay. Good. Okay, did you check this lecture 8 stuff? So what's your assignment for your next assignment, guys?
We have to use same.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So
we have to use exceptions for repo and the validators, and also we have to read and write to HTML or CSV files, and to make an UML diagram.
Okay, so you did it all but the UML diagram based on your question.
Yes.
So it's kind of an easy homework, right?
Except the part where we had to read from an HTML file. Yes.
You had to read from an HTML file.
Yes.
Really? Where does it say that in
Yep.
the assignment? Show me the assignment. Come on. Let's work.
No. Imre said that on Skype. And
oh, getting jiggy with it. Nice. Oh my god. That is so nitpicking, man. That's cool. I like that guy. Cool. So how did you do? Did you do a parser of HTMLs or what?
We had only a very specific HTML to read a table.
Yeah, so why didn't you use like regex or something if you had a specific table? Could you have used regex from SO?
Tried that one, didn't go very well.
Why?
It was kind of a weird pattern, and I didn't figure that out, and I found a simpler solution.
Like what?
So I went with that.
What was that? The simpler solution?
You're gonna hate me with this. So I had a tokenize function which took a separator as a string. So I had the HTML tags.
Okay.
So I removed the slash for the end tag so that they're the same, and then push the row of the table in the tokenized function. And
yeah, man, but like, why did you? I mean, do other guys share Alex's view that it will be difficult to use regex on this?
I'm not saying it's specifically difficult. I'm just saying that for me it was difficult at the time, so I went with the simpler.
I'm just thinking like first you need to isolate something that's in the table, and then you just say like you need to, I don't know, isolate dot star between table and the end of the table or something, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I kind of find it a bit straightforward. What do you guys say? Can you use the knowledge you got from operating systems to solve this one? Bodo, how did you parse the HTML?
I wrote it on separate lines, and I used the find function for strings.
Oh, okay.
Which was also pretty neat for me. I didn't even think about regex because I don't see it as easily supporting in C++.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So in C++, I bet it's not that easy to use. Let's see. I don't know if I ever used a regex library in C++. I can't remember.
It's kind of weird in C++.
Well, at least you have to try, am I right? Like, let's see if... Oh, damn! It has like iterators and stuff. Cool. Holy smokes, man. Man, they're using... This is cool, actually. Don't you agree?
Yep, it is.
Come on, it's kind of straightforward. I mean, it will get complicated, but I think you just like... You can take only the table part and then go row by row, right? It's kind of...
Yeah, well, the thing is, the regex is not like the grep one. I tried some grep
yeah, I
regex
know.
and
It's a bit
it
different,
was
yeah. I get it.
took a very different turn than I expected.
Oh yeah, but come on, like if you look at HTML, I know it's not as thoroughly constructed as JSON or something like XML or something, but it's kind of the same idea, right?
Yep.
From the parsing point of view. So yeah, man. But yeah, did it take a lot of time to parse the HTML file, Bodo? Like to implement the parsing?
More specifically, I don't think I understood the question.
I'm just saying, like, how much time did it take to implement that feature?
It didn't take a lot. For me, it took the most to think about how to make a proper architecture of the multiple repository files, because I tried it to print it as convenient to read it. So as long as I printed it, I knew how to do it. That's the way it's easiest for me.
So did you create an upper class, a more abstract class of iRepo or something that can be inherited by all the implementations?
Not really iRepo, but only an iReader writer, which is used by the repo.
Oh, so you externalized the reading writing implementation.
Yeah, but I found it kind of easier to maintain this way.
So your repository receives a method for reading writing. I mean, an instance of an object of reader writer or something.
Yeah, which has an interface, and there are three types
And
of
it's
classes.
like injected in the constructor.
Sorry?
Is it injected in the constructor? Like a parameter to the constructor of the repo?
No, but the repo decides it when it gets its.
So are you using the factory pattern?
I mean, using the extension of the file, and I choose by determining.
Yeah. Okay. That seems elegant enough, right? I can see why you thought about that, but I think it's a good idea. Yeah. So how, Pascuti, how did you tackle this problem?
I didn't do it yet.
Man, it's like okay. Who am I asking? What did you do, man? What did you do in the holiday?
It was holiday, so
When
I didn't do
you're
much.
on holiday. Man, I do a lot of stuff during holiday, but not for school. Lavinia? Lavinia. Răileanu? Tu cum stai?
Păi am făcut ăla, am făcut tot. Am citit câte o linie și am făcut cu string fine.
Okay. So, okay guys, I know what we're gonna do now. We're gonna think like let's call it a project manager, software architect or something. Okay, we're gonna go top down on and we're gonna use UMLs, right? So in your opinion, do you think the UMLs are constructed after the code is done or the app is set up and all that, or before that?
In an ideal way, it should be done before, but as for our homework, where we aren't very sure what we are going to do, maybe after.
Yeah, but what is the okay? So the main question, I mean the underlying question was, what is the use of UML diagrams? Why were they invented for? You know?
It's kind of a project, like a starting sketch for a program.
Okay, so it's like they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So you depict in a graphical method what you would write in words, right? So let's take. Can you give me the assignment text? Somebody put a link here. What is? Oh man, come on! I don't want that. I mean the text. Don't give me a link to Jigiland.
That has the text.
Yeah, I know, but I need to log in. No, I mean, I need the actual the actual.
I can make picture of it if you want.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh, got it. Weaving an enchantment has become second nature. Blah blah blah. But I need the just an actual context of a problem, like the initial topic of the domain you work with and stuff like that. Okay, so we can work on some concrete.
5, 6, 7, and then this one.
Yeah. That's what I need.
It's the 4th in.
May the 4th be with you. Stai că se apropie, așa-i? Ce 28 aprilie. Nice. Ok. A cool gust of air brushes past you in the tower room. Blah 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 blah. So what are you? Okay, so this is a good example. Okay, so
maybe this should be more concise.
Concise, yeah, but that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so the workflow in a computing company, right? So like, guys, are you following me? Because now we begin the actual talk. Okay, so what happens in a company, right? So we talked about this. Now we're gonna talk some more, right? So you have the guys in the suits sitting on tables talking about the projects to come, right? Okay, so who is this guy?
Imre. Jiggy.
No man, come on. Who is this guy? This is
The
client.
project manager.
Nah, this is the client. This is the guy who talks a lot. Okay, consider it's me. This guy has a lot of ideas, man, and he always thinks that his ideas are great, and he wants to do some very cool stuff. He's like, I don't know, Elon Musk, I guess. I don't know. But he doesn't have the programming skills to achieve that, right? So, on the other hand, he has money. So, it's a wealthy dude who wants shit done. Who's this guy? Who is this guy? Cine stă la masa mea?
Is this a project manager?
Yeah, it can be. Let's say it's a project manager. It's a high-level specialist in the firm, right? A guy who kind of why is this guy sitting at the table and nobody else? What does he have? What are the skills possessed by this individual?
More experience.
He's seen them all. He's lived them all. He knows how to do what. So this guy feeds the fuzzy ideas to this guy. So this guy takes the fuzzy ideas and what does he get as output?
Project.
I'm sorry?
Project, since he's a project manager.
He what? I didn't hear the first part.
A project, since he's the project manager.
Yeah. So how? Yeah, but let's go deep a little bit into the what does the project contain?
Specifications, maybe.
Concrete what?
So he makes the UML diagrams.
He will do that eventually. So the idea is that in an abstract manner, he takes all the garbage that was spilled by the client. I mean, it's not garbage, but the shape is not very consistent. The shape in which the message is sent from this guy. It's like, I want to do an airplane that runs on oxygen or something. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are just fuzzy ideas enunciated by a guy who doesn't know technology, let's say, but he wants stuff done. This guy takes what this guy is saying and tries to give a more organized form to these thoughts, and he organizes them as in the shape of functionalities based on entities from the problem domain. So this is Ziggy. Like, look, this is what, right? Ziggy is your client. He told you that you need to implement this, and you and you are the project manager. When you started reading this assignment, right? You did just that. You distilled the proper information from all this quite entertaining piece of narration written by Ziggy, right? So, did you do that? Did you distill concrete functionalities based on the entities that you took out of this text?
Yes.
Right?
Kinda, but they gave us all the
I'm sorry?
technical. They gave us the technical information.
But supposing that that part was missing, okay?
Yes,
Right?
then we should have done it ourselves.
Yeah, but this is what happens in real life. You have to agree with this. Like, you have a client. Usually, sometimes the client also is savvy into computer stuff, and the discussion is more straightforward. I mean, you speak each other's language, but sometimes your client is from another domain, and the way he expresses things are dependent on the domain he's in, and then this guy has to be clever enough to understand exactly what this guy needs, right? Do you agree? So I have functionalities and entities from the domain, right? So these are the objects, right, from this statement. Okay. So what goes on next? Who can tell me? Pârvănescu, Ștefan? What do you think goes on next?
He talks to his team, and
Does he?
Or he only sends them these basic ideas.
So let's say he has a meeting with whom?
His team.
Team of what?
His
Like the team leaders?
developers.
Who are these guys at this table?
So he should talk with other guys to make these basic ideas more complex.
Why would they want to make the ideas more
Not
complex?
But more.
Look, I'm gonna write something
straightforward.
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, he can do it. I think he can do it on his own. Like, now you need to check out your assets, right? What are your assets as a programming company? Guys, what are the assets of a programming company? It's ironic because it's gonna be you, man. Right? Karina.
The asset.
Yeah, like assets, like entities that can be used to gain profit or something.
The programmers.
The programmers, okay. What else?
The
logistics.
computers and some expensive IDs.
So, well, you might need some cloud support, or I don't know, it depends, right? But you need logistics and you need people, right? And not
Right.
it's not about the number of people. How did people figure this out? Do you know?
What?
The crisis when Steve Ballmer came and said developers. You know, like there are several studies that show that the worst mistake you can do when a project just doesn't work and it's swamped is to hire more manpower, right? Did you know about that? Like, it's not a solution when your project is stuck to simply hire more workforce, because it was shown statistically that that will not lead to a better development of the product. It will just create even more confusion, and you will still be stuck, and you'll have to pay more money and get less results, and it's not an efficient method to handle that situation. So it doesn't matter how many employees you have, but it matters the quality of your employees. Why? What is the task of this guy? He says he needs to give to this client an estimate of what? This is a business meeting, right? You can
Time needed to get the work
so
done.
you need the time, and also you need to set up a price, right?
Yes.
So it's this guy has to think from a business perspective as well. I mean, maybe not him, but he has to consult with the guys from the money department, so to speak. So the idea is this guy is willing to pay money for his product to be done by this company, okay? So besides the ideas he also has kaching, right? So you need to take this kaching and turn it into your kaching. So the idea is that he will not only go to your firm, right? He will go to several firms, and it's like how do you call it? An auction, right? He's gonna go to this firm. He's gonna play hard to get. He's gonna I don't know, flip his money in front of you, and you want his money, right? This is the idea. So you want to be the guy who comes up with the best affordable solution to this guy and still increase your gain from that. So yeah, it's time and also is money, right? So in order to assess the time, right, you need to go talk to your team leaders and to create what? A timeline of events of how much will it take to develop the product, correct? Do you agree with this, Karina?
Yes.
So this time period, where are you with the graph, with graph theory? Did you reach
Shortest
directed
cost.
acyclic graphs? Did you talk
Not
about
yet, I think.
DAGs? Bodo? In graphs.
I think that's the next assignment. I'm not very sure.
Yeah, but
Which
did you
was
talk
the...
about? I mean, yeah, assignment. But what about the course?
We are a little behind because we didn't do the last seminary. It was in the free day, and
Oh.
same was the lecture. So I don't think it was. I don't remember exactly from the last lecture, and I don't believe we reached.
Okay,
that
but
point.
you guys know what a directed acyclic graph is? Pascuti. Huh?
I think I know.
So tell me.
So you said a directed acyclic graph. So it's a directed graph that doesn't have cycles.
Okay, so if it doesn't have cycles, what does that mean? So let's say I have a node here, it's an entry point, or several entry points, right? So since it doesn't have cycles, you cannot go back. it means that you have a directional flow of the edges from left to right. Do you agree?
Yes.
And then you have 3 types of nodes. You have entry points, intermediary points, and you have sinks or output points. Do you agree? Yo.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So these points don't have any output edges, and it's gonna be like this. Why do you think I'm telling you about this stuff, Bodo? What if these nodes are activities and these arrows or edges are constraints between the activities, meaning that in order to start this activity you need to priorly finish these 2 activities, you know, like the starting of this activity is based on the finishing of this activity, right? Do you agree with that? We can model perfectly the relationship between the dependencies between activities in a process using a directed acyclic graph. Bodo? Somebody else? Silvio? Hey guys, are you with me? Anna?
Yes.
Also, the guys aren't speaking to me. Okay. Victor? The Strangler? Yo, stranger.
I'm here.
So, what do you think? Can this data structure model properly the dependency between the activities? Any type of activities?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the problems that you will need to solve with directed acyclic graph will be just that. Like you will learn in that subject how to organize these activities once you know the dependencies between them, how to schedule them, their earliest starting point or latest starting point, depending on what you want, with algorithms from graph theory. How cool is that, right? So this guy can use algorithms that you are going to learn in graph theory to organize the workflow of each separate team of individuals led by these guys. Okay, so but before he does that, he needs to talk with his, I don't know, lieutenants, if you will, right? He's the general, he has lieutenants, and he has to make the battle plan. Okay, does it make sense, Bia?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, so this discussion will lead to a time estimate, as you might know. You will see how you can estimate the time. You will actually, this is very cool, man, because you will get the meaning behind your assignment in graphs. Okay, so it's worth something. It tells you something. You should learn about the way you create the critical path in a directed acyclic graph, because the critical path will give you this time that is needed up until the earliest time and the latest time you will be able to finalize the project based on. So all these times required for each action will be given as an estimate by these team leaders for their own I don't know, their own part of the implementation and architecture design purposes. Okay, so you will be able to give this guy a time estimate based on the amount of time this guy tells you it will take their teams to fulfill the each task. Okay, also you will be able to compute, once you figure out which of these teams are needed to solve the project, because you will not need all the teams in your department for one project. You need to select the teams that are most capable of solving the tasks that are required by the client. Okay, people with experience with this sort of things. So once you do that, you know which the teams employed in the development of the project are, and then you can estimate also the salaries you have to pay for each and every one of them, blah 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 blah. Right? Do you agree with this, Bodo?
Yes.
So then you discuss, you accept, you create like a bonding contract, and between the client and the firm, right? Also, it's all done by contract. Okay, everything in mainstream programming will be done by a mutual understanding in the form of a contract. Even the programming part, we talked about it. Okay, so now these guys have to establish what?
How to implement the idea?
No, before that, there are two parts. Okay, so the implementation is second to what?
To how the architecture should look like.
Exact.
I mean,
exact.
how to.
So you first need an abstract architecture of the product, right? And then once the architecture is completed and you figured out all the modules, right? So here it has to be modular, and it has to follow which rules? Of high cohesion and low coupling, right? Do you agree with this? So the problem that is proposed by the client requires some sort of a pattern of abstract architecture that best fits the needs of the client, right? Once you establish that, you need to see the modules that are components in this architecture. Okay, so once you do that, you know that for each module you will employ one of these teams. Do you agree with this one-to-one relationship between the teams and the big modules in your application?
Yes.
Who else? Let's talk to somebody else. Who's specific? Yo, who that? Hello? Se aude, man? Filip Pascuti, tu ești de acord cu ce am zis?
Da.
So what are the big modules? I mean, how is an abstract give me an example of an abstract architecture that we are using. Pascuti. Filip.
Mă gândesc.
No, Doamne, păzește-ne că zici că atâtea arhitecturi am făcut, bă, de nu, am făcut una și bună.
Layered architecture.
Wow, bă, dar mult era de gândit la asta, mă. Corect.
Sorry.
Layered architecture, da? Ok. Do you agree, Bodo? This is a type of,
Yes.
like the most straightforward type of layered architecture, okay? So in order to quickly recap what a layered architecture is we started in fundamentals of programming with this, okay? So you have your app, which is a black box. It gets input and it goes, it gives away output, right? This is like any system, okay? But first you need to separate the presentation layer, right? And then you have presentation. This was your first assignment in fundamentals of programming, guys. Okay, so you have presentation versus implementation, right? Functionalities. Okay, that would be the first separation, right? However, in the functionalities part, we talked about another separation between the business logic and the infrastructure. Okay, so now you have the business logics here, and the persistency layer, so to speak. Okay, so this is persistence. Infrastructure, let's call it infrastructure. And this is on top of, I'm gonna use this symbol and tell me why for persistency.
Like a database.
Yeah. Right? So the persistency can be done by using databases, text files, files, binary or textual, or, right? You remember pickle, right? And also what? What should I be writing here?
Clouds?
Yeah, right? Do you agree? Guys, do you agree with this? Huh?
Technically, clouds aren't just offshore databases.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, technically, and databases technically are nothing but files. Do you agree?
Oh, so it's like more abstract as it goes
more
up.
Abstract and faster and of higher dimensions, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, but if you look at this simple layered architecture, you have to agree that this architecture is shared by all of the products that are being sold and bought and make a gazillion dollars nowadays. Do you agree with this?
Mostly, yes, but
because
they may be a bit more complicated.
Complicated, yes, but from an abstract top view, right from above, looking at the most abstract general components that create these apps, right? You will have this part. This will be on the client side, right? Do you agree? And the rest of this will be on the server side, usually for a mature application app nowadays. Bodo.
I'm not sure I get the question.
So do you agree that if you think of a real life app of today, you just name one. I don't know what you like to
Facebook.
use. Facebook, okay? Facebook, right? You have a web client that takes care of the interaction with the client and all that. But this one calls the servers, right? That hold what? That do the business part, right? If you upload something, they take care of that. If you want to find something, they take care of that. If they want to run some AI on a shitload of content, they do that where? On their servers, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, most of the things happen on the server. I just get the final information
Exactly,
about.
because you are the client, the receiving endpoint of that, right? But I'm talking here about an overview and an abstract architecture, and from this abstract, this is called N-tier architecture or layered architecture. Have you heard of the term N-tier?
I don't think we did this at lectures.
No, I mean in real life, not in lectures. See? So, in a nutshell, you need to generalize any type of app that can be done in today's industry. Can you do it with this? Like, you have clients, they can be desktop apps like Stream, right? You can have web apps like Facebook, web browsers, all that. Or you can have console-based apps What else do you have? Mobile apps, mobile clients, but if you can encapsulate them all as clients, right? These are just some means of getting information from the user in some sort and passing that information after it's been validated to the business tier, which is an external tier usually that holds the business logics of your application, right? But in order to maintain persistency of the data, you will need also the third tier, the database or the cloud or the files you store the persistent information in. So like a hard medium in which you store the information, right? Do you agree? Guys,
Yes.
did you think about this stuff before? Vlad 101 Vlad, what is your opinion on this? So even though tell me.
It's the best way to design an application, I think, since
It's
seen
simple,
in the
right?
last assignment. The last assignment, it's very easy to modify things.
Yeah, exactly. So that is why you need to think first about the abstract architecture, and only after you designed a very simple, straightforward, no nonsense architecture, only then you start implementing. Okay, so clearly you need to create an abstract architecture first of your app, and I highly advise you do that as well for your practical exams, right? So you need to know who talks to whom. Okay, do you agree with this?
Yes.
Okay, so once we design the architecture, okay, you will have the basic modules that communicate, right? You will have a module of presentation that will talk to a module that tends to the business side, that will talk to a module that does the abstractization of the CRUD operations on a data set or something. So I don't know if you figured it out already, but the fact that you've been playing with Legos as kids is just a part of your training as Padawans in computer science, guys. Do you agree with this? Like, this is what architects do, man. They take Lego pieces, which are the components of the app, and then they see if they match into creating an intricate yet simple, straightforward architecture for their application. Do you agree with this?
Yes, but nobody gets actually paid to play with Legos.
Well, what about the project managers? Don't you think they have tools? I mean, there are tools for management that actually give you like drag and drop capabilities of like.
Kind of, yes, but I believe it's a bit more complicated than this. You also have to think about how good they fit. Even there are multiple choices that fit, you still need to think about which option fits the best.
I know. That's why these guys are paid the big bucks, right? Not any monkey can do it. Like, so okay, we're talking about how the pieces fit. What is that? How do you call that? The way pieces fit into each other to create a more complex structure. How would you call that in one word?
Assembly.
Okay. So, and if it's generic, if it's like it doesn't depend on the actual component but the nature of the component, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you call that? You know, if you say that like this type of component is gonna match with this type of component, and then I'll have this type of component here, which is like this, and then based on this, I get
like a puzzle.
like a
Puzzle.
yeah. So what do puzzles have?
Maybe
Cohesion.
Cohesion.
Whoa, man. Yeah. Well. Let me think how to lead you to the answer. Okay. So what do you learn when you learn something? When you learn how to do something, what do you learn in fact? Because you can once you learn something, you can generalize that action for other actions that are similar to that, and the intelligence of human beings is based on the ability to extrapolate series of actions when they fit other problems, right? So how do you call that? What are you learning? In fact, Anna. Anna, are you with us?
I'm thinking.
We're thinking. We're thinking.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about? How about have you heard of this term, Bodo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about it.
So we need to, in order to be able to see how these pieces match with each other, you need to understand the patterns they form, right? Like there is a certain pattern that will help you elegantly deal with a whole bunch, a whole class of problems. Because why? Because people have faced these problems. People in the industry, software engineers, have faced these problems for decades, and then they learned from their mistakes, and they found out a general pattern to approach this, or to not to approach but to avoid these problems. You know what I'm saying? So these are the weapons this guy has. He has to know a lot about design patterns and what goes where, you know. How do I put these abstract components, how do I connect each one with the other to fit this problem that I'm trying to solve, this particular context that was offered by the client. Do you agree with this? Ioana 11. Who are you? Ioana, ești cu noi?
Yep.
Okay. So, do you think we use design patterns so far in our architecture?
Well, I guess so.
Like what?
Because others,
I'm sorry?
I mean, others have learned the things we learn right now, so I guess that's a pattern too.
No, but design patterns are... Look, guys, did I recommend this book already? Bodo. This one.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm gonna download it and put it on the group conversation, okay? Guys.
Maybe just the link, it would be faster. Just a pointer.
Faster. Obey your master. Pastor of Muppets. Okay, so this is one of the most famous books in computer science. It's called Gang of Four because it was written by these four gang bangers. So the idea is that you, as first year students, by the second year, you should have read this, man. I'm just saying, like, just cut it short. You should read about and understand all these patterns, right? So at the end of it, it's even they even have a UML artifact depicting the relationship between these patterns. Like how meta is this, right? So if you want to design an app by the rules, the artistic rules of the trade, look, you need to employ these patterns, okay? However, you by now you didn't have to use most of these, okay? Because the application you are trying to create is basic, okay? But we're talking about real life apps from the industry, okay? And here they just tell you what patterns, and then if you go to that pattern, you know how to implement the abstract infrastructure for that pattern based on the needs you have, okay? So Bodo, I'm asking you, do you think based on the name only, do you think there is a pattern that you can apply to your current app?
Let me check. Maybe the strategy, because I
strategy, where that? I can find it. Where is it? Oh, here.
I kind of was inspired by that when I used this, because it's the only one I know.
What about the factory? Look, let's check out the factory method, okay? Where is that? Introduction, blah blah blah, case study. I think this is creation effect. Okay. Abstract factory, I think it's better, right? Yeah, I think this is okay. So a factory will create different types of objects, right? So you will have, this is what I was talking about, like you need an abstract version of the repo, and right, an of the factory of repos, and then you will have concrete factory for all like file repo or HTML repo or whatever, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, this seems like something
Like
approachable as.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, okay? So I'm not saying that you should use these, okay? I'm saying that these patterns are employed by the guys who do all this in order to solve to create higher cohesion and low coupling in their architecture, right? Because that's the main goal there. So the idea, what I'm suggesting for you guys, okay, is not now, in your summer vacation, whatever, when you have time, okay, read this book, understand all these patterns, okay, understand when you should use them, and then you can build on your career as, or your ascent, not only as a developer, but also as this guy, right? Like a guy who understands the game from a higher level, okay? So this is my advice to you. Read this book, okay? Understand it. This is the basis of understanding the abstract notion of a software. Not only because we didn't talk anything about implementation. Do you agree? We talked about a lot of stuff, but we're still in the abstract realm. We're not talking about implementation yet, okay? Because the implementation is being done by whom?
Programmers.
Yeah, where are those? I don't see them on the map here, man.
On a lower level.
You said it, not me. Okay, can I erase this timeline part? Do you remember this, right? Okay. So let's put them on their lower level, right? So each of these guys, right? The team leaders go, they have a whip. No, I'm kidding. And then they know what to do, okay, and they need to meet the deadlines, right? Because based on the scheduling that was established beforehand, they need to do the deed as it was intended, right? So now each and every one of these guys has a team, manages a team of devs, right? So at the end of the day, do you think that the time and money required for the project is based on the quality of these guys right here? How much is it based on the design of the architecture, and how much is based on the assets from the groups underneath?
It's kind of on both, because if any one of them is bad, then it's pretty hard to.
True. But I was talking
create
about
something.
percentages. What do you think about which is more important? Do you think it's a balance? It's like 50-50?
Maybe yes, but I think it kind of relies more on the programmers, because the small things that may create the app to crash from time to time mostly rely on them.
So do you agree that each team is usually assigned to designing a module based on this high cohesion, low coupling philosophy? And the worst part of it all is not implementing. I mean, assuming that you have well-trained devs, okay? Let's assume that all these guys are at the top of their game and they know they don't usually take more in developing stuff than you assume them to do, right? But the main problem is what? The interaction, the coupling between, because they sometimes, if these guys did a bad design and the coupling is higher than optimal and the cohesion is lower than optimal, then you have problems, right? That's when problems occur, right? I mean, you can have other type of problems like staffing problems, like you don't have enough manpower to pull a job that big, and you said you could, but you can't. You don't have the logistics to pull it off and whatever. But usually, let's say nobody is insane enough to go and try to develop a task he knows it cannot be done with the manpower and the logistics they have, right? But let's assume that they can do that. The main problem is the communication between these groups. That's where you waste time, and time is money. More time means more money. You need to ask for more money. This guy becomes dissatisfied, and it's bad, right? So I want you to understand that when we talk about high cohesion and low coupling, we're not only talking about the modules in the application and all these design patterns and abstract architecture, okay? We're talking at the same time, because there is a bijective relationship between the work of the developers and the architecture. We're talking about the communication between the teams of developers, right? As well. So that's where the bottleneck of developing an app, one of the bottlenecks of developing an app that leads to more money spent and more time spent on the development process. Do you concur? Philip Pascuti.
Yes,
Really?
I guess.
Carina, ești ok cu ce am zis?
Yes.
Okay, so all this mumbo jumbo talk has to do with you understanding the importance of UML, okay? Because how do you think this guy communicates with these guys? And how do you think these guys communicate with these guys? What is the means of communication? So this guy, together with his first hands lieutenants, he distills what based on the functionalities? right? Do you agree? Guys? Bodo? They split the workload they need to do, like the development of each module and so on, based on the scheduling and the architecture and all that. And then it's the task of, what each team leader has to do is to assign the project manager assigns the task and iteration to each module, to each team, and then the team leader assigns, distills it more, and assigns packets of tasks to each developer in the sprint, let's say, or in that week, or in that amount of time and all that. Do you agree with this? Do you think that's what happens? Do you guys know what happens in an actual firm? Like, have you worked in one, or do you have friends that talk to you about what happens? Bodo?
This seems more like the part of the scheduling, which is not so frequent for a software engineer. So I haven't heard about so much about this.
But I mean, from the perspective of a dev, like a dev is usually given tasks to solve, right? And these tasks have a deadline, and they have stand-up meetings, let's say, in which they have to say how much they progress with it, especially for these guys to know how well the actual time meets up to the estimated time of the unit, right?
Yes, but in general, for the programmer, it's not so much. I don't believe they think so much about the other task and the iterations. They just
just receive the task, and they have they have the pre. Okay, so what is a task? Okay, let's get down to this. What's a task? You have precondition, postconditions, right? On some methods of some object of a class that you need to implement, right?
Yeah, generally a task is just a little part of the application, which is kind of a unit, can be done from top to bottom.
Okay. All right. So a task can be split in what? Into what? If you were to break it apart, what are the components of
Two tasks.
So you had to do this type of split at the beginning of fundamentals of programming, right? When you had to do your documentation, and you have to distill iterations that contain tasks that contain what functionalities. Do you remember? Did you have this assignment in fundamentals of programming?
I don't think that we had to do a documentation.
You didn't have to do documentation for the lab?
No, we didn't have to do documentation, as far as I remember.
That is weird, man. Okay. Okay, but that's
maybe comments, but not something explicitly.
No, I mean the guys from the Romanian line, they had to, like they had to create a Word document.
No, we didn't have separate documents, just in the code maybe comments and this kind of stuff.
The only documentation we had was for the first lab at graph algorithms, and that's it.
Yeah, but that's not an app. Okay. So so the idea is that from a programmer perspective, like Bodo said, you kind of need to do your job and not be bothered with the whole picture. But that's what I don't want for you guys, I want you to always, whatever, you start from the bottom, you're a dev, but in time, if you play your cards right, in time, by investing in your own development, you can become this guy, and then you can become this guy if you want. Okay, it's not for everybody, but you need to see your career as perpetually evolving. Otherwise, you'll be stagnant, and that's not a good option, if you ask me. Okay, so this is the only thing I want to emphasize. That is why you need to understand the importance of UMLs, man. And then you need to understand that the UMLs are what we do now. Okay, this is where we are. We talk to the client, we talk to our lieutenants, we are this guy, and now I need to depict the abstract architecture that I want that these guys to tell these guys to do, to implement. Okay, but it's not about implementation, it's about the abstract architecture. This is the UML, Unified Modeling Language. Okay, it's a model, it's an abstract stuff. Okay, so what would be this app? Okay, so first I need packages. Okay, or like the big parts of the app. I have the UI, the business, the the infrastructure. Okay, and within I'm gonna put the classes and the objects for each entities that I'm gonna use, abstract entities in my design. Okay, so this is what will this be? That's the UI class, right? The console class. What do I have here? Okay, let's say I have the services in the business layer, and I'm gonna use what? Programming principles to create my architecture. Okay, also here I'm gonna have the repos. So mind you that these are abstract. Okay, so maybe I don't need all this, right? I will see. Okay, these are classes. Okay, rectangles are classes. They have 3 subsections. Can you tell me what each subsection contains, Karina? Karina.
Yes. Please. So for each one, the subsections.
Yeah, so you have the top, middle, and bottom subsection. What do I write in each of them?
I'm not sure.
Oh, come on! Like in a class, this is a depiction of a class in the UML, right? Why aren't you sure?
Okay.
So tell me. So tell me, Ma, what's it gonna be? She said.
Well, we should write the name of the class.
Correct. Okay, so you write the name of the class here, right? So let's create a pattern of a class here. So from a UML perspective, you have the name of the class. This is a very clear and visual depiction of what a class should contain, and clearly this is the name. Here you have name. Then you have structure.
And functions.
And behavior. Let's use the language you learned in the DSA. Like, what's that? Data structures and algorithms, right? You have structures and behavior. Do you agree? To define an ADT, an abstract data type, you need to define its structure and its behavior. Do you agree?
Yes.
So you can see clearly that there is a very deep connection between object-oriented programming and UML, okay? Because clearly this is a class, okay? It's not a separate ADT in which you separate the structure from the behavior, you put it all together in a class. So a class has its name, its structure, and its behavior. So the structure is comprised of what? What does this part contain? Somebody else. Anna, banana. Anna.
Yeah.
What do you write here?
The name.
Man, the name is up here. It's cool.
Yep, attribute indeed.
Do you only write the name here? Is there any way to specify something else about the class in the first section, Bodo?
I don't think so. I was thinking maybe about what it inherits, but there is something
What
different.
if it's an abstract class? Can I model that somehow?
Yeah, for example, in star UML, if it's just an interface, it has a different shape.
Like, okay. What about this? Have you found this symbol?
No, not yet.
Okay, but there is clearly an indication of the degree of abstraction or concreteness of the class that is also depicted in that name region, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now the attributes. What do you have to say about the attributes, Karina?
The type.
What are the type? What does it mean, the type? Data type?
Or what kind of object it is?
I'm sorry?
Yes, the data type as what kind of object it is.
And also
Oh,
the access modifier, right?
okay.
It's important. So the access modifier can be one of plus, minus, or hashtag, which is called diez. What does each of these mean? Anna.
Yeah. The plus is public members, minus are private members, and yes, nu știu cum se zice, are protected.
Cum e protected? Okay, cool. So these are the attributes. Okay, do you need any more explanation about this structure part of the class? Pascuti.
No.
Huh?
Da, it's ok.
Bă, eu te-am întrebat altceva. Eu înțeleg, ce cu lipsa asta de chef, man? Astenia de primăvară, ce ai pățit? Ai mâncat prea mult drob? Ce s-a întâmplat?
No.
Okay, so what do I have here in the behavior section?
Your class methods.
So the methods, right? We called them functions before, now they're methods, okay? So what do I express here? Like access modifier again. What else?
The name of that method.
Then you need the return type, right? Then the name.
Yeah. Okay.
Data types for the parameter. Correct? Okay, so this is, so it's done in reverse than you would think, man. First you think about what an entity from your domain should contain, right? And which elements of the structure should be private, which should be protected, and all that. Then you think about the behavior of the object and see what type of behaviors it has to exhibit. You don't implement it. You just need to say what goes in, what goes out, what type goes in, what type goes out. You design a contract that will be established between you and these guys and their underlying workforce, okay? If the guys underneath you don't comply, you can use this contract to make them, right? So this is what programming by contract is all about. Do you understand? So now you need to use this visual representation of classes and objects, but classes mainly, to establish relationships between them, because it's not enough to just design what all the classes look like, okay? The important part is the arrows between them. So clearly layered architecture is a linear architecture. Do you agree with this, Bodo?
Yeah, the linear architecture is a simple layered architecture.
Yeah, but it's linear. It's linear because it's a directed acyclic graph. Why? We talked about this in the first semester, because the UI talks to, let's say, each of the services, right? Also, I need the domain here. I forgot about the domain. So I need 3 entities in the domain as well, okay? Okay, guys. So, yeah, so let's call these classes X, Y, Z like we did before. And Z, what is the relationship between Z? If Z is the class grade and X is the class student and Y is the class subject. How, Anna Banana, can you tell me the actual sentences, simple sentences that depict the relationship between Z, X, and Y? A grade, what is the relation between a grade, a student, and the subject? Oi. Man, why aren't you answering? Anna.
Da.
So what is the, I mean in real life? Ce?
In real life,
In real life, what is the relationship between the grade of a student for a subject and that student and that subject?
The student.
Man, what is the relationship between them? Tell me a sentence, Karina. A clear sentence with a subject, a verb, and an object.
Relating the students' grades and the subjects.
Yeah.
Well, a student has a grade for a subject.
Only one grade?
No, one or more grades for each of the subjects he's enrolled in.
Yeah, but that's kind of weird, right? Like if you had to put a list of grades in the student class, then, right? You don't want that. So what you can say is that a grade has to have a designated student for the grade and has to have a designated subject for the grade. Okay? Do you agree?
Yes.
So how do I put the arrows and which arrows do I put? So clearly you have two major types of relationships. Has a and is a, right? Relationship. Do you agree? Did you talk about this? Oi. Somebody.
It is covered in the lecture about UML as far as I know.
Thank you. So what kind of a relationship do I need to put between Z, X, and Y? Is a or has a? That's the idea. Karina?
Could you please tell me once again, well, for example, which is the student, which is the grade class? And...
Z is the grade, the other ones are whichever you want them to be.
Okay, so
grade has a student and a grade and a subject, right?
Okay, so how do I put the arrows? That's my question.
So from the student we put an arrow to the grade, then from the
what
grade
type of so if for the has a relationship, do I have one arrow, more arrows that I can choose from?
I can see more.
So what is the difference between composition and aggregation?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but you talked about it in the course, right, Bodo?
I think so.
Well, okay, let's
it,
talk
it
about
was mentioned the two types of arrows.
Just read a little bit what I'm watching here, okay? And tell me if you understood what it says.
Yes, it seems similar with the content of the lecture.
Karina?
Yes.
Okay, so the has a can either be a relationship of composition, like it's part and entirety of the entity, or aggregation, okay? Which is the weakest?
Aggregation?
Yeah, right? This is a good example here. Read this sentence here and tell me that you understood it. Yeah, so do you understand this? So if you do, answer me this. Is dependency injection in the constructor a form of aggregation or composition? Heyo.
Composition?
Man, that's the exact type of response or pseudo response that I don't want. Like, come on, be sure about it.
Okay,
Why would it be?
think
I mean, think about what each of these relationship means.
Well, since it's there from the beginning,
no, it's not there from the beginning. That's the exact idea, because it's not with dependency injection.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Didn't get it really
So,
right. Yeah.
So think about it. Okay, let's talk about this because this is really, really important. Okay, I want you to understand this. When I create the repo instance, right? This is an object repo. Once I've created it, it has a life cycle, right? Do you agree? It goes on on its own. Then I create a service object, but as a parameter to the service object, I give a reference. Okay, I give a reference to the object, already created object of a repo. Okay, do you understand this? So on his lifetime, this guy can pass messages to this other guy, but this guy has his own life, man. It's like a friend you meet and you ask him for favors and he does, I don't know, maybe he changes somehow his inner whatever based on your request and stuff, but he gives you back an answer, and then you do your own stuff, then you ask him stuff, he responds back. You know what I'm saying? Is this the actual relationship of these two objects? Guys. Hey, yo. Karina?
Yes.
So if this guy finishes its existence here, this guy can be healthy and go on with this. It doesn't matter if this guy finished its life cycle. However, if you wouldn't have used, this is called dependency injection. You know that, right? Do you know that? Who doesn't? Pascuti, did you know that it's called dependency injection?
No, I did not.
What do you mean? I'm pretty sure that Juliana has told you like a dozen times already about dependency injection, man. Has she?
I'm not sure.
I told you about this dependency injection in fundamentals of programming, man. Why do you forget, bro?
I don't know.
Când e ziua ta?
A fost.
Uite ce-ți iau, bă.
Mersi.
Ce zici? Ginkgo biloba, bă. Okay. Okay, if I wasn't using dependency injection, what would have happened? So I would create, so some of you did this and it was bad. Okay, because what you did was in the constructor for the service, you created and you instantiated an instance of the repo. Did you do it? How many of you did this at the beginning? Who?
Guilty.
I know, right? So it's bad, right? Now, you impose a life restriction on this object. You've created it. This goes along as long as you live. And then it's the same idea. You pass messages to him, but he's like your guinea pig that you've created. It's just like in Rick and Morty with the guys Rick has to power his car, right? So when you decide to stop existing, this guy has to die too, okay? Because it's part of you, you've created it. It is a component part of yourself. When you go, it goes. That is composition, okay? Do you understand? Yo.
Yes.
Did you understand this before? Was this useful to talk about? Ana Banana, ai înțeles?
Am înțeles, acum un pic, la final m-ai pierdut.
Adică, păi zi ceva. Habla conmigo, Mira.
Explică-mi un pic aici ultima parte cu ultima schimbare. Nu primele dungi, al doilea dungi.
Al doilea dungi? Okay. So, I instantiate a service, okay? But the service, the constructor of the service doesn't receive any parameters. It's just the constructor, okay? Yo, are you following me?
Da.
So,
yes.
Within the constructor, it constructs an entity, an object of type repo. Whereas before, the repo was already constructed in the main function and existed independently of the service. Do you understand? So yes. Here you instantiate a repo in the main function, then you instantiate a service, and in order to instantiate the service, you need to give a reference to the repo that already exists so that these guys can talk to each other, but they can exist separately. So that is called aggregation, right? And it's weaker. But if you don't do that and you use, for this particular relationship, you use composition, it means that the repo is a comprising part of the service, which is clearly not. So they said here that the chassis, do you know what the chassis is in a car? Chassis. Ana. Mă, Doamne, dar cum să înțelegi exemplu, bă, dacă tu nu știi ce e un șasiu? De ce n-ai zis ceva? Ăsta îi, înțelegi?
Ok.
Structura de rezistență, da? Ai înțeles ideea?
Da.
So, if you break the chassis, you break the car. If the car dies, the chassis dies, right? It's a component. It's a component of the entirety of the car or the service. So clearly you can sniff bad code when you do it, okay? Bad abstract design, because this will imply that the repository is a composing part of the service, which is clearly not. Do you agree, Karina?
Yes.
So that's why, my friend, cine era? Alex, you shouldn't have done that. But you learned a lot from that experience, didn't you?
Yep, still remember the FP exam and how you mopped the floor with me.
Oh yeah? I don't
But
remember.
but I've did a really bad exam. I've learned a lot from the critic.
Dar tu nu ești ăla de la tineretul penelist, nu?
No.
Dar unde-i băiețașul? Nu-i din grupa asta, bă?
Nu.
14, dude.
Ah, ok. Ok. Mi dor de popundău ăla, bă, să știi. Cu ăla I mop the floor, bă, deci du-te.
Oh, yeah.
Holy smokes. Bă, maybe I have anger issues, te-ai gândit la asta? Trebuie să cânt aia cu I feel pretty and witty and gay. Ați văzut filmul? Anger management.
Nu.
What the bă, dude, what the fuck, man? Anger management, ok, nu mai intrăm în discuții de filme că o să dureze până la noapte. Deci, so, what is the relationship between this? Că this is where we left off, ok? Does the grade kill the student and the subject when it ceases to exist?
No.
Of course not. So it must be the weak one, aka aggregation, right?
Right.
So aggregation is what? Which one? The empty blah blah din ăsta.
I think so.
Well, let's check. Be certain about it. Certainly. Blah blah blah. When the diamond is black, it signifies composition. When the white is aggregation, ruling the nation. So I'm gonna put the rhomboid stuff where? To the guy that has the object or the guy who is head? Bottom, zici tu? În cazul ăsta, lui notă.
Sunt sigur că am prins chiar așa bine, deci între care și care?
Păi uite, te zice aici, pondul are rațe.
Ok, și în schema noastră între care te spune?
Asta Z-ul e nota, ăsta e studentul și ăsta e whatever, materia.
Păi agregare, cred că ar trebui.
Da, și ziceam în care capăt pun rombul, la Z, nu? Aici.
La student. Dacă e la student.
Dar de ce? Păi uite-te.
Nu, studentul are o notă.
Păi uite-te, zice că pui rombul la ăla care ține alelalte, nu? Nu nota conține referința la student. Nu lacul conține sau cum faci?
Ok, nu, eu mă gândeam că un student are o notă și se poate schimba.
Păi nu, stai. Păi stai, man, că am vorbit de pattern-ul ăsta de mult. Păi nu, asta am făcut la FP, gen nota va conține referință la student, referință la materie, ID notă și valoarea notei.
Ok, da.
Nu? Dar stai să fiu și eu. Deci tot timpul mă disperă, bă, că trebuie să fii foarte atent unde pui rombul, corect? Deci
nu, e ok cum e.
Da, la grade ar trebui, nu?
Așa, da. Așa?
Da.
Bun. Și acum trebuie să dai, we have to give the multiplicity order, because a grade only has, it's a one-to-one, right? It's a one-to-one relationship, right? Because you don't hold a list of entities of type X, okay? Do you agree? The relationship between the repository of type X and this X, right, will be that the repository holds more entities of type X, correct? It will be that this, like pack, this is repo X, and then it will have, and usually on the line you depict the name of the, this is gonna be entities, X entities or something. So you have the list or dictionary. Do you understand what I'm saying? So here you have a private member, you put it minus here, a private member called X entities, which will hold a whole bunch of entities of type X. Do you agree? Do you agree that it has a relationship between a repository of objects of type X and the objects of type X from the domain? Karina? Hello?
Yes.
So here I'm gonna put one because I have only one object of this type, and here I put a lot because I can have none or more, like in regex, the multiplicity of how many do I put in this list, okay? Does it make sense, Anna?
Yes, it makes.
So in order to model the relationship between the repo and the entity that is held in that repo, you will no longer put this, so this will be empty here, but instead you will say, using this private member from here, that should be here, I mean you can put it but it's redundant, using this private member I create a relationship one-to-many between a repo of type X and objects of type X, and I can have none, one or more objects of type X in this field, which is either like, I don't care what it is, right? It's a container of entities of type X. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Okay. So now the relationship between this guy, which is the service of type X, and the repo of type X is again aggregation, right? Because this guy will have the reference to it's called repo, let's call it Rx. It's a private field here. It won't be specified there, but it says that it's one-to-one. Right? And also the UI will be in connection. Okay, so instead of this you can put arrows, okay? Those are weaker forms of representation and more cute. And again is one-to-one, and this one has like the SX field here. And you will have the aforementioned relationships between services. So this is RY, and I can model the relationship between this guy and this guy by RY. So this is clearly a private member here, right? Okay, so this is an RZ. So this is Y entities. This is the list of entities you have stored in the repo, right? So now I have Do you guys understand this? Is it clear?
Yes.
Is it cool? Because I find it pretty cool a little bit. It like simplifies it in a way that if you can read a UML, you figure out it's a very in-your-face depiction of what you need to implement, right?
Right, and this is like the only thing that we have to do for that.
Well, so it's too easy, huh?
Oh, but it doesn't seem that hard.
It's not. It's not. It doesn't have to be hard. Who says nothing should be hard, man? In computer science, keep it simple, and it will be simple, right? So, but I'm not done yet, okay? Just bear with me a little bit longer, okay? So, this is the same relationship we've got, but now this guy, you have to agree that this guy has to have 3 friends, right? We talked about this, right? This guy has to be friends with this, this, and this. Right? Yo.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
However, what I want to introduce here, okay, is that these repos are interfaces, okay? They're abstract classes, okay? And that you can implement them differently using concrete classes, okay? So this will be file repo. This will be HTML repo. This would be whatever. What else do you have? JSON, XML, or something? What is?
TXT and CSV. I'm not sure what is
CSV. Okay, but that's the file repo. Okay. Let's say XML. Okay, or JSON. Whatever. XML. It doesn't matter. Okay. So the idea is that up until this level here, you can create an abstract. All these classes can be abstract. Do you agree with this? They don't have to implement anything. They just need to tell you what is the interface of it all. Which are the messages that can be passed here. This is what's important. The function A that calls the function B from here and so on. Okay? So this is the usage and the important part of UMLs, right? It tells you how the classes communicate with each other via their methods. This is the basis of object-oriented programming. Modifying the structure of objects by calling their methods, modifying their behavior, and the modification in behavior leads to modification in the structure. This is the philosophy, okay? And you cannot see it more clearly than in UML diagrams, because that's where you know which call you can make to which entity and all that. Okay? Do you understand this, guys? Is your architecture, is your project looking like this?
It's less complicated.
Why?
I mean,
why is it less complicated? I mean, maybe because you don't
we have only one type of entity.
Okay. But I mean, you have separate services if you had more than one entity, right? And you have one UI that talks to these guys, right? The services. I mean, it's the same layered architecture, classical one we talked about before, right? Like in fundamentals of programming. But now it's emphasizing more on the object-oriented aspects of it all. So what I want you to understand is that, going back to this is very important. Do you agree that people can create purely abstract outlines of the architecture with 0 implementation up until here, and then implement all these classes can be purely virtual, and then based on this you can hire these guys to implement based on the precondition and postconditions of these functionalities here. Bodo.
That's pretty much it.
Exactly, but do we do it? Because we don't do it, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, like you don't see good architecture, especially in student implementation, right? You don't see the separation of the abstract part from the implementation, okay? That is the main idea. I don't think, I mean, maybe you picked on this, but in DSA, that was the main idea from the beginning, to separate implementation from abstraction, right?
Right.
So please, when you create the next iteration or the next application, try to make it separate. Like, try to have the abstract part, and then the implementation will be, I mean, you just, when you write the main code, I mean the code that you write in the main function, it should only contain, if you can, abstract stuff that are later on concretized or implemented with implementations of other classes that inherit from the purely virtual or abstract outline of the architecture. Because you can create a purely virtual, to some extent, a purely virtual outline of what messages should be passed from which object to which object without actually implementing the object. Do you agree with this? That would be cool, because we need this separation from the abstract thought of the project manager, and then a separation from the actual development process that only puts bone on the marrow, so to speak. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That is why I would recommend, I mean, it's not, I mean, I would recommend you have an iRepo abstract templated repository, a purely abstract class that says that you should only have like add, remove, blah 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 of type T. Like, it sets up all the functions that you need to have for the repos. Then from this one you can inherit, like, you can inherit the file repo, which is also abstract, but you can like you did. So this is not abstract. This is concrete, but it's generic. And then the only abstract methods here should be the ones that you use, Bodo, like the writing and reading part, right?
Yes.
And then you can inherit from this guy, like you used you used injection to solve that, right? Now you can use it by polymorphism, and then based on this file repo you have text file repo, you have these classes, right? HTML to inherit from this. So you did it right. It's not a criticism, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying.
I know, but I'm still using polymorphism, but on a different layer.
Yes, I know. So the idea, look, I'm gonna conclude with this, okay? The idea of object. How do you know you've written good object-oriented programs? Like, the idea is that you shouldn't see
cycles in the UML.
What? I'm sorry?
Cycles in the UML.
That's good. But if you follow this simple linear layered architecture, you will not have cycles, right? Okay. You will not have cycles, because that's the simplicity of it. You just talk from the upper presentation layer, it only talks to the business layer, and the business layer only talks to the underlying infrastructure layer that hosts the repos, then this one just does stuff with the domain and the validation layers, right? So the idea is that you can only talk down to people. That's exactly what happens in the industry environment, right? So there is no way in which you can create a loop back in such if you follow the rules of such an environment, right? Therefore, you will simplify, you will create a branch like or DAG like relationship between elements, okay? But the other, from a more low level coding perspective, when you have to do a switch in your code, like, or a bunch of ifs, then you didn't understand polymorphism right. Do you agree with this?
Yes.
So every time in your UI, when you have to check if the command that was sent by the user was this or this or that or this, you can avoid doing that if-then statement by using proper polymorphism. So that's a challenge from me to you to avoid that using polymorphism, right? So you need to think about of a way in which you need to avoid that switch from your main loop. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean the one that chooses the service, right?
The one that chooses the functionality that needs to be done for each command introduced by the user. Yeah. So that can be modeled using. You have to admit it can be modeled using polymorphism. Just figure out how. That's my challenge to you guys, okay? So,
all right.
Karina, do you have questions about what we talked?
No, it was clear.
Okay, so you understood the difference between aggregation and composition, right?
Yes,
and you understood this implementation, like is a relationship, because we didn't talk about the other type of relationship, right? The is
yes, I understood.
That's inheritance in a nutshell, right?
Right.
So the idea is that I would like you to really think about what happens in the business of computer science. Try to understand it. Try to be above the game, okay? I don't know if you really believe me that this is an important book, but it is, okay? So also, you should be reading when you have the time. I talked to you about this one already, right? Guys?
Yeah, also our always seminar teacher told us about thinking in C++.
What do you mean, man? Juliana must have told you. I mean, I'm pretty sure that she did.
No, also Kozhokar was a big fan of this book.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of milestone. There are milestone books, right? That you should be learning. Okay, so as a first year student, I don't know. There are some big ass books. Okay, like for data structures and algorithms, you should, of course, read this.
Corman.
Yeah, Corman. You see, these are the Cormans of their designated areas of expertise, like patterns and object-oriented programming. You know, like it Bible-like reads. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, Corman. For graph theory, I don't know. For the graphs, what can I recommend?
Kind of Corman covers it.
Yeah. So yeah, now is the time to read big ass books. I'm just saying. Like, you're young. I don't know if you noticed, man, but you're young adults now. Pascuti, did you notice this?
I'm not sure about it.
You're not sure that you're a young adult?
Yeah, like the transition is, I would say, not that.
Man, I'm still in transition, bro. So I get you.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever.
But it doesn't mean I didn't read these books in the first year, okay? So another thing is when you read them, like make notes, take notes, because you won't. It's very it's a lot of information, and like they all have hundreds of pages. Look, like 400 pages, and you need to distill in your own way what's important to you and just, I don't know, store it somewhere. I was never the fan of writing a abridged version of stuff to learn, but it worked for me. Once I passed that barrier, it helped me a lot to study for mathematical exams, for example. I highly advise you that you read all the material or the courses with a pen and pencil and paper in front of you, and you actually write down everything that's important, all the theorems, while you try to understand them. Then you no longer read from the manual, you read from your notes and create even more abridged version of those notes. And then this is the notes that this is what I did, and it kind of helped me, because first you will see in the the operating system that you are you are given the ability to have a cheat sheet, a legal cheat sheet. You know about that, right, guys?
Yes, we know.
So I posted this summer. I found it when I was at home. Let me show you how this cheat sheet works. Where is it, man? Hey, let me. Do you recognize these individual? Hey, the good old times, man. Okay, let me go. Let me find that because it's important. Important, okay. Like where that? It has to be somewhere around here, but I don't have all my photos here. Ah, here. Okay. Did you like this seminary, guys? Tell me, give me some feedback.
Yep, really useful.
So this was my cheat sheet for the operating systems, man. How cool. I mean, this was one side of it and this was the other side of it. So it was the whole book in there, man. And look, this was like, I had a system of like indexing notions and stuff like that. It was so cool. So you know what the trick is, man? Like Mr. Boyan is like tricking you into learning, even if you want it or not. And it's awesome. Like once you finish doing this, you kind of know 80% of the theory, you know? And it's freaking awesome. Right? So this method I picked up from the OS exam. Like if you try to study for something, take notes, distill the notes into smaller and more concise notes of what's essential, and then boom, you have what it takes. You repeat that, and when you don't understand something, you go back. It's like having a cache memory, right? What do you say about this? Do you agree?
Yes.
So, okay, I have to go teach somebody else. So, if you have any questions for this aspect.
I think it's all right.
Okay, so good luck, guys.
One quick
Yeah.
one. Could you put the links for the books, maybe?
Yeah,
Or
of
the
course.
titles?
Absolutely.
That's
Where
one
that?
thing. Thank you.
But I did put this one, right? I put that one, and now I need to put the other one. So, thinking in C++ by my homeboy Bruce Eckel, who also wrote Thinking in Java. So yeah, you will find them. Like, look, they're one click away. I mean, so if you don't have anything to ask me, I'm gonna go teach AI to guys.
Okay. Have a nice day.
Bye. Have a nice day.
You too, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.